I really enjoyed that C-SPAN, the in-depth thing that they did with you. I thought you really came off with great aplomb. I was really taken with that. C-SPAN's a good outfit, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so myself. I think it's one of the most important things on television.
Absolutely. They've got that, what do you call it, book TV on the weekends now, where they
Right.
talk to authors and intellectuals and things.
Right.
It's really good. I could take 100 channels of that.
Yeah, I'm sure they could too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, good evening. Good evening and welcome very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Stanley Crouch. He's it's hard to put a label on him, but he's a writer. People in New York City will be aware he writes twice a week for the daily, for the news here in New York. But he's also, I was saying, he'd be like a sort of, in a sense, a Renaissance man. He's an essayist, a novelist, a television commentator, and so forth. And Stanley, welcome really very, very much to Conversations and to Manhattan. Great pleasure to welcome you.
Oh yes, it's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we were just chatting as we started the program that C-SPAN, Brian Lamb C-SPAN, just did a in-depth 3-hour program with you that was carried out all over the nation and the world and so forth. And I thought you acquainted yourself very well on that, and I congratulate you on doing and all of your work. We have a whole hour, so we have some time to talk, and you've weighed in on a lot of subjects and so forth. But I wonder, maybe you could share, if you would, some of your own background, where you were born and raised, a little of your education, and then maybe we could talk about the contemporary human condition, particularly from a perhaps, the humanities perspective. But could you share a little of your own background, please?
Well, I was born in Los Angeles in 1945, December 14th.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up there. When I was growing up there were a lot of people who were coming in from Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Texas particularly, maybe Oklahoma second and Louisiana third. So in a certain sense, it felt like growing up in the Southwest. I wasn't aware of that at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but when I traveled outside of California and encountered some of these other places, I realized that I had a Southwestern sort of a environment that I grew up in. I wasn't, again, I wasn't aware of it, but so many people were from those places that they had that feeling.
Do you think Southwestern's a little bit different than California? Is California an entity by itself, or is that included within the Southwestern consciousness?
Well, I don't think California has particularly where I was in Los Angeles, it has a very different feeling to it than any place else in the United States, I would say.
Anywhere else on the planet, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Because I think it's been exceedingly influenced by the entertainment business, of course. And it also has developed a kind of a tourist town kind of veneer of geniality that's exceedingly fake.
It is. Yeah.
So, but when I was growing up, it wasn't really that strong, and people were extremely supportive of you if you were trying to do well in school or something like that.
They were, yeah.
And so it was there was a lot of stuff going on with people that showed that they allowed them to show their support of you going to the library, loaning you books, celebrating you getting good grades. There was a lot of stuff like that.
That's really great. Are you talking about in general, the culture in general? Or are you talking about your own immediate background, your family and friends in the neighborhood? Or are you
exactly the
you
neighborhood?
Think the country was that way more at that time than they are now? Or?
Well, I think at that time there wasn't a full-scale war between younger people and older people.
Okay, that's an interesting theme we could talk about.
See, I think that now there's this cult of adolescence that's been created by rock and roll, and particularly sets the young person in opposition to the schools and to parents, and in a way that I don't think it existed when I was a kid.
That's really interesting.
And I don't think that's good for kids.
Remember Abby Hoffman said never trust anybody over 30 when all that anti-Vietnam stuff was raging and so forth.
Yeah, well, he was one of the people responsible for the way we're kind of screwed up now.
You think we've screwed up on that in that front? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think that any time a society goes adolescent, which the United States has without a doubt, then I think that the culture is not going forward; it's going backward.
You think it's gone adolescent? That's interesting. It started in the '60s, or
I would say so.
Yeah. Any idea what is behind that? Sociological, economic, political forces that are behind that movement, or that?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of disappointments that people had. I mean, a lot of it
with the system, right?
Yeah, a lot of it spread out of the civil rights movement,
Yeah.
and people were very disenchanted by the kinds of things that were happening to people who were simply trying to get voting rights for people who were Americans and should have been born with them. And it was a number of
been Americans for many hundreds of years in many cases.
By the way,
absolutely, yeah,
right,
yeah.
And so I think it started with that, and then there was the famous Berkeley strike and Mario Savio, and I think that then drugs and Timothy Leary and LSD and all of that, and then the war in Vietnam and all that stuff I think added up to kind of a belief that a group of young people could perceive the actual depths of the situation that they were in better than adults could, and that's always a flawed conception.
I wonder, do you think, I just asked, just out of the blue and so forth like that, that we got, I wonder, the founding fathers of the United States of America, I wonder if George III or Louis the 16th or 14th or 15th or something like that might have said seen the founding fathers of the United States of America as adolescently not able to understand the roots of the political organizational system that had been set up and established for some hundreds of years, in terms of that, or the people in Russia at the time of the Russian Revolution.
Well, let's put it like this.
You know,
they might well have seen it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
But quite frankly, there is a very big difference between John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and men of that caliber, and people like Abbie Hoffman.
You don't think Abbie measures up to Tom Jefferson?
Kind of nor Eldridge Cleaver, nor Huey Newton, nor any of those people.
Nor any of them. You think, okay, that's interesting. Usually, I suppose in that case it would have been going back to people who were precursors to the political things like Voltaire. Or Moliere, or some of these people that were leading up to, I mean, we've been living 500 years in Europe with a feudal system, and then there came this idea you're going to have something called democracy.
Right.
And probably the people who are ensconced in the traditional order usually have trouble, and we always have a trouble, don't we, with the youth getting a little feisty about the old way of doing things. But you think there's some sort of a new way other than that traditional problem with the younger generation, with the established ways, and feistily hoping we can make things better or something?
Well, personally, I don't think that there needs to be an oppositional relationship between young people and older people.
You do not.
And the first thing is older people do know more than young people. What young people know is the fact that they're upset about something, and that they have some kind of a problem with authority, and that they think that one should take their ideas as seriously as it should take someone who actually knows something. Now, having a 26-year-old daughter, it's very clear to me that if you actually let young people do what they want to do, it wouldn't be good for them or for you or for anybody else. In most cases, I mean, because basically they're naive. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, whether or not they have a grand idea, as did the people in the civil rights movement,
there were grand ideas involved in the civil rights movement that had eternal values that were really measuring up to them. The adults were not measuring up.
Yeah, but there were those, but there were a lot of ideas that came out of the hippie LSD commune side that were just naive. That you
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
But it was all. But a lot of those people, they just didn't. You know, I mean, Jerry Rubin, Abbie Hoffman, and those people, they were basically naive people. They couldn't have run anything. You know, I mean, they couldn't have run anything. I mean, they didn't really know anything about the organization. I mean, they were just some middle class brats who had been influenced by the taking of drugs and some kind of, hand-me-down leftist ideas. But, because I saw.
I was there. Yeah, I knew Abbie. I knew Abbie was a friend.
Guys were idiots.
I didn't think Abbie was an idiot.
Well, maybe he wasn't
I knew
an
idiot. He was
but I mean, there's nothing. You
guy.
can't compare those kind of men
to Jefferson.
You can't compare to Jefferson. You can't compare him to Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
you can't compare him to
Martin
Bob
Luther
Moses.
King was there at the same time.
You can't compare him to Bob Moses.
Got around to
I mean, those were far more responsible people.
Malcolm was around then too, and they were going down certain paths. I mean,
but I don't have much much regard for him either.
Might be that thing going on. That was Bobby Dylan was singing something was blowing in the wind, you know, that kind of thing. There was something stirring along about 1968, 69, 1970 on this planet that had widespread. It was in France. There was a big uprising. There was something blowing in the wind, and you think that was just youthful exuberance and lack of understanding of the wisdom of the elders that were leading the world at that time?
I mean,
or even we could apply to now.
Look, am I supposed to talk? Are we
yeah, no, I'm sorry.
If you want to just go really, if you
want
to talk, let
no.
me listen to you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm ready for it.
All right, go ahead.
I don't know you because maybe I should listen.
Yeah,
to you.
No.
You know
go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
Well, the basic thing
Yeah.
to me is that, you know, I mean, I was in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
My sense of it is that it's just not good for a society for you to have. That's the point I was initially making.
Yeah.
For you to have an oppositional relationship between younger people and older people, because older people can help younger people do what they need to do. See, a lot of the things that young people want done, they would do. They could get to them much easier if they had other kinds of advice. Now, if the older people are corrupt, obviously, then their advice is going to be the kind of advice that's going to lead you into supporting corruption.
Yeah.
But if they're not corrupt, the odds are they know more than you know about a given situation. So the kinds of ideas and thoughts that, say, a guy like Ralph Ellison had about that period are a lot more enduring than the stuff that Malcolm X thought, or Leroy Jones, or Eldridge Cleaver, or Huey Newton, or those people. Now, whether or not those people were sincere, they just, that kind of stuff, I mean, you know, I mean, it was kind of nuts.
Yeah, okay, well, they were on the political side, and you've been engaged in the arts and that sort of thing, by and large. They're looking at jazz and literature and that kind of thing, and the things that last through culture, the cultural things that last through history are from the arts. I once saw a thing about the Romans, and they had 30 people from the Roman period that are still remembered, and they were all in the arts, you know, practically, except for a couple of politicals and bankers thrown in, but mostly it was from the arts, you know, and as James Joyce will live, and this kind of thing, and you're right about that, and that's what you got interested in. You're interested in the arts. You've written definitively on jazz and that sort of thing. Maybe that's something that you're particularly have been from your youth, interested in the arts, and when did you pick up on your interest in jazz, which is prodigious?
Through my mother.
Okay.
She had some Duke Ellington records around, and she had a lot of 78s from the 30s and the 40s, I think, and she had seen a lot of these musicians play, and she had stories about them, and she'd go on and dance to their music, and she talked about the way they looked and the way the band sounded and the way the musicians carried themselves, and I was very taken by that, and I was taken by the quality of the sound of some of the instruments that Ellington used, the way that the people would play on his recordings, and so I started being attracted to jazz primarily through that. And through different people that I met when I was growing up who were jazz fans and had stuff. You know what I mean? You know.
From an early stage.
Yeah, because see, in that era, if you were walking down the street to the 50s, late 50s, if you and I were walking down the street and we were 15 or 16 years old, and we heard Thelonious Monk or anybody coming out of somebody's house. We actually could go knock on the door and ask what that was.
I hear you.
People would, you know, and if they felt up to it, you know, they might say, why don't you guys come? You want to listen to this for us? And they'd sit there, we sit down and listen, and they tell us something about it.
There were people singing a cappella on the street sometimes, making music that was gorgeous, you know, in the 50s. I think it is. I had a friend who used to go around and record it because it was classic stuff that was just being done, you know? But it was some real quality in terms of the musical expression being made then. And Ellington was a great American composer. You think the greatest?
Well, he's one of them, without a doubt. I mean, I mean, of a certain, in terms of sheer American originality, he's probably the great one. But I mean, you do have others. I mean, Gershwin wasn't a bomb.
It wasn't bad.
Walter Piston, I've been listening to him a lot as a concert composer. Very good.
Classical, like?
You know, and then of course we've got people like Charles Ives, Carl Ruggles, you know, Guthrie Schuller. There are a number of people who are very interesting composers.
Have you had your hand in all along on contemporary classical music as well as jazz? And where does jazz fit in? And it's overworked, but maybe you could help fill it out. That say that jazz, I don't know, blues and jazz, that's the true American art form? And what do you think about that statement?
Well, I think that's a little
in?
overstated.
You think it is? Okay.
I think that's a little overstated. I mean, it's one of them.
It's sure one of them. Yeah.
I mean, film, I think you could make an argument for American film. I mean, since D.W. Griffith was such an extraordinary influence on the cinema of the world.
Yeah.
And of course, you could easily make an argument for tap dance and a number of the kinds.
Honey Coles.
And also modern dance.
Yeah, yeah. Modern dance, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, you know,
Graham?
Ted belonged with what? Ted, Sean, and those people, you know, Ted, Sean, Martha Graham, those kind of people.
The Copacetic?
Well,
they're that tap dance.
Yeah, but that's all in the tap dance.
Yeah. Honey Coles.
Yeah, that's all tap dance.
Yeah. But that's an art form.
Oh, no. I'm saying that's one of the original ones.
But is that all lumped together as an art form, or something that is a particularly strong contribution in terms of the American cultural contribution to the planet?
Well, I would say that the whole. You know, I mean, modern dance was essentially invented in the United States.
It was, I guess I hadn't realized.
Yeah, definitely. And so you have that. You have, like I said, you have film. You have tap dance. I mean, those are American originals too. All of them.
Yeah.
You know, and you probably could make a strong argument for the American cartoon, you know, and not to mention the comic book. There are a lot of things.
You're talking about editorial cartoons as well as comic books?
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, those all, you know.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah, those
things. The Bugs Bunny stuff.
Yeah, all those things. But also you have people like you have a guy like Art Spiegelman who wrote this book called Mouse. That's a masterpiece.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, you should check that out.
Oh,
it's
I will.
a cartoon.
There's a lot of books to
check
out.
Book. Well, you can get through that one fairly quickly because it's a cartoon book.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a truly great book.
Okay, Spiegelman.
Spiegelman. Art Spiegelman.
Okay, Art Spiegelman.
It's called Mouse. M-A-U-S.
Is that a classic that's been around a while? Or?
No. It's only been out about 10 years, maybe.
Okay, look for that. Yeah. I love political cartoons.
Oh well, it's got all that in there too.
They're very powerful. Thomas Nast was there, and from on and continues and that sort of thing. You've read a lot in your life, right? You read a lot?
Well, most writers have to, don't
they? Usually they do, don't they? Yeah. But you've been from youth you were reading. I heard you started this program, so you were in an environment. You were saying, in a sense, the environment at large, which was interesting, encouraged reading and intellectual investigation and so forth.
Definitely.
And that's eroding, do you think, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I mean that's because we have a national catastrophe, which is the collapse of the public schools, and we really see my contention is that every society of whatever sort has a natural resource that it can't really abuse, and that's its population.
Yeah.
Your population is your greatest natural resource. Yeah. Whether you live wherever you live, whether you live not far from polar bears, whether you live in rainforests, whether you live in deserts, the people are the natural resource. And I think that the public school is of exceedingly important. Has an exceedingly important position. Especially in a society like ours, because it prepares people to try to make their own way. If they're born in unfortunate circumstances, it should prepare them. It should give them enough information to be able to try to change their circumstances. So So the fact that these public schools let out so many people now who are semi-literate, who are basically illiterate, who really haven't been trained, that's kind of like what I call intellectual genocide.
You think? Yeah, and that's a huge problem. It's nationwide, all over the country. Is it in all parts of society, suburbs, inner city, all over? It's a national.
Probably
thing?
not as big a problem in the suburbs as
because they got resources and things. And they got the cultural. Well,
you also have the fact that a lot of people in poorer circumstances have been duped into believing that that they're okay the way they are, which people never thought when I was growing up.
They did not.
No, in other words, people didn't think that you were okay if you were illiterate. if you were illiterate, they thought that was an unfortunate condition. They didn't think that was okay. They thought it was better for you to be able to read. You know, they thought it was, you know, so they actually believed in all of that. So they didn't buy a reduced version of themselves as an authentic version, and thereby avoid addressing self-development of the sort that can come through education.
When you say literate, are you I don't mean to be. Are you talking literally being able to read and write? I mean literacy, or are you talking about like a knowledge of science and of the the broad, general, liberal trans? I mean, we have an age of. Marshall McLuhan used to talk about information, or Norbert Wiener said information overload. We're getting inundated with information. There's so much going on. There's a revolution coming in every field practically now, and it's coming so quickly against the whole sweep of human history. And we've only had other kinds of way of communicating, electronic, other kinds of things, film, now television, now internet, now all kinds of ways of communicating that aren't based on literacy. Are you talking literally about reading as a way of transmitting a culture, or are there other ways coming? And Norbert Wiener said information overload within the system permits pattern recognition. They can see patterns. I have a hard, I mean, what's caused it? What's caused this diminution of educational capability or intellectual curiosity or whatever that you're referring to as such a disaster in the United States, do you think?
Well, I mean, for one thing, there was no, both the right and the left abandoned the public schools.
Do you think they? Okay, yeah.
And they didn't really make sure that the public schools stayed on a certain level. The civil rights movement, which was obsessed, understandably, with equal treatment under the law. Public accommodations, voting rights, open housing, fair employment. They didn't see, the leaders didn't actually see the importance of making high-quality public schools a political issue that sustained itself, in the communities. That is, so that community leaders would always be paying very close attention to local school boards and pushing them to make sure that the educational quality stayed at a certain place. And then you have a kind of cultural relativism that doesn't work for the guy at the bottom.
Okay.
And it's one that's often promoted by either the political loudmouth who purports to represent the guy at the bottom, and the liberal at the top who reads but tells you it's okay if you can't. You're still a person. You're still a human being. Like you didn't know that. So there's a big issue. Because there have been lots of political systems that tried to beat that right out of people, and to keep alive the idea you are a human being no matter what the thing is. That's a big issue on the human agenda. But you see, with the idea that someone who can read tells you that it's okay if you don't have to. You don't have to. So you don't worry about that.
You better get nervous when they start talking that way.
See, because like you were talking about. See, here's the problem when you got with a guy like Wiener. Here's the problem with a guy. Here's the problem with a guy. He said that in books.
He said that in
He said that in books.
No.
He was a writer. He wrote books.
Well, he was talking about systems.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
He wrote his ideas down in books.
So did Marshall McLuhan.
He didn't communicate in patterns of recognition.
No. And Marshall McLuhan launched his broadside against literacy in books.
That's right.
By and large.
That's all BS to me.
Well, okay.
See, finally, in a functional way, that's okay. See, that's.
You could even say James Joyce. A lot of what James Joyce did. No, he was announcing an electronic age. That's what Ulysses was about.
No, look, these guys.
And he
write their ideas. Anytime a guy writes about the fact that it's okay that you don't know how to read, or that there's another world coming in which you're not going to have to read.
Well, what about that?
That's garbage.
You think so?
It's garbage.
I'm not so sure.
All right. Everybody who's important in the world of technology can read. There are no highly placed important people in the world of high tech who are illiterate. You can't find them. They don't exist.
Almost certainly, yeah.
You know.
I mean, it
So
can't
whatever
literally
anybody
be.
wants to say about the media itself, there's no one up there, Bill Gates or anybody else.
They all can read. They dropped out of school.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference whether they dropped
Edison
out of school.
dropped
They
out
didn't
of
drop
school.
out of
He
school.
did okay.
They didn't drop out of school before they learned how to read.
No, well, no,
Or they
that's true.
dropped out
Most
about
people, yeah, but
five.
they needed the mother's thing. But that was the only way you could communicate anyway. But now you got different ways of communicating. You got different ways of communicating, and McLuhan was really wired in an interesting way. He was a smart fellow, Marshall McLuhan. He was really together, and he was a great scholar of James Joyce and that sort of thing. And he's the one who said, he gave us, the world is becoming a global village. That kind of, the medium is the message. The existence of the medium is more important as what's being communicated. And he used to say that the Western civilization, not a bad thing to defend, perhaps, and everything, but it was based upon phonetic alphabet, he said, and that we're coming to an electronic age. And he said Joyce was a precursor of the fact that the electronic age is coming and heralding big changes and so forth. And he used to make that proposition, and there are all kinds of things going on that really do not have to be done in a linear pattern or in a literate linear pattern, I would think. I don't quite so, and I know it's not. You're on the good side of things here, saying everybody should read, and I agree with that, and everybody should.
No, I'm just
but
saying.
I'm not sure 30, 40 years that people are going to have to read.
Well, they
they don't have to. They don't have to be literate in that in the literate sense of reading script and everything. There will be ways of communicating that may be able to get back closer to the way we were when we were. Homer wouldn't let the poet, or Plato wouldn't let the poet into the Republic because they were reading, would not write reading because it will create forgetfulness in the learner's mind. There was a consciousness prior to the reading. I don't know. I'm just fishing around here with an idea. I'm not so sure. Although literacy certainly is an icon that everyone seems to say is a sacred thing, and it probably is.
It's not sacred.
Or something,
It has an enduring importance that's separate from all of that.
Okay.
See, the experience that someone has reading cannot be had listening to music.
Absolutely.
It cannot be had looking at television.
That's what
it
McLuhan
can't be had in any other way, because there's a profound experience about the nature of your humanity that comes about through reading.
That's right.
Now, it doesn't your humanity isn't obviated because you can't read, but there's another aspect of your humanity that you come in contact with if you can read.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, see, that's not gonna. So, no amount of machines are going to remove the power of that experience.
Well, it's a...
See, so in other words, Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses, is not going to be replaced by anything in the world of technology.
No, okay, let me put another tack on it. I like Mitchner. Mitchner's a popular writer. He writes in Hawaii, and you open up a Mitchner, and he's great, literary. It takes 8 pages. Guy's standing on a cliff, and he's in Hawaii, and he takes 8 pages of beautiful literature. And literature's gorgeous. Literature's really important. And to describe, the bird was in the sky was blue, the sea was green, the wind was brushing my face, and all that. It takes 8 pages to describe that if you were standing in that spot in the real world, you would experience all at once. You would experience multisensorily. You would experience that thing that the author is describing all at once. That's what McLuhan said. We're getting back to an all-at-once electronic world, being rejoined to that kind of contact with nature that we lost when we started extending our sensorial capability disproportionately by the disproportional extension of technological extensions. And he said, I don't know, maybe we're getting too far afield.
Well, it's not to me. That's all fine.
Well,
but the point to me is that these are theories that people have.
Yeah, but you get James Joyce, and you got
that James Joyce didn't
and
think that.
And those are some of the people.
Joyce didn't think that.
He did. His whole thing was about the coming electronic age.
That's what they say about him.
Oh, maybe that's the critic talking about.
That's what they say about him.
Yeah.
James Joyce, if you want
greatest writer in the English
language, there's a picture of him.
Yeah.
With a
eyeglass.
No, with a magnifying
glass.
Yeah,
magnifying glass.
Yeah. That's James Joyce.
With a drink in his hand.
That's what he wasn't drinking. He was trying to read.
Yeah.
A lot of people drink who don't read.
You think he was the greatest writer?
No,
Who? Shakespeare, I guess, of the English language.
Well, there's nobody close to
Shakespeare's.
him. No. No, I don't think so.
If he didn't write it, somebody did. Somebody created that kind of stuff.
Whomever produced those plays, whether it was one guy or if it was a block full of people, it doesn't make any difference.
It still got created.
Still better.
Yeah. Anyway, so you've been doing it. You were in Los Angeles, and then you came to New York. When did you come to New York?
1975.
What brought you here?
Well, I had been teaching school for 7 years, and I was in danger of becoming tenured. And I was paranoid about what I had seen with other people who had become tenured and had a job for the rest of their lives. And so,
you were in danger?
Well, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do.
You didn't want to get security for the rest of your life?
I didn't want that. No.
You don't want that?
No,
you think that's good for most people?
I didn't want that then. I didn't want it now.
Yeah, really. You don't want it for yourself. You want it for humanity, tenure, security, and you think that'd take off the edge or something, or?
Well, you did ask me about me, didn't you?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I did, yeah.
You did ask me
I'm
about
sorry.
me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I did, and I really apologize. I'm sorry, yeah.
So
you didn't want, yeah.
So that's why I came, and I did okay.
You've done really well.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah. And you came here and you started writing. Writing was the first thing you did, or what?
No, I came. I was playing the drums.
You were a drummer, yeah.
I had a few bands. I played in some bands, and then I stopped playing around 1979 or something because I didn't like the way I sounded.
You didn't like the way you sounded?
I didn't think I was. I didn't think I had it. I didn't think I was playing the instrument well enough.
Well enough to measure up to what?
Well, not the people I admired.
Yeah.
You know, so then I
Max Roach.
Oh no, Lord! I wish I could have played like that.
Yeah.
If I'd have played like that, I'd never stop
That's
playing.
a force of nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thelonious Monk. There were some real giants, right?
Oh,
and did you know some? You knew some of these people. I know I have an acquaintance, and you have an old friend in Ornette Coleman. He's one of the guys that's been around for a long time improvisationally and so forth. Right. You've been able to Dizzy Gillespie, did you know? Or
I knew Dizzy, yeah.
Maybe you could share a little bit about your experience with the jazz world, because you knew a lot of the greats and could write well on that field, and that's really important.
Well, I met guys in Los Angeles when I was there. I mean, super musicians like Bobby Bradford, Horace Tapscott, Arthur Blythe. Played with Bradford and Blythe. James Newton, great flutist, one of the greatest flutists in the world. And I came to, when I came to New York, David Murray and I lived together on 2nd Street in the Bowery. We shared this loft there. And we gave concerts there. And, and then I, through Gary Giddens, writer for the Village Voice, I started writing for the Voice, and then through an editor there named Rudy Langlis, I started writing about things other than music.
You were writing originally on music? Jazz?
Mostly jazz stuff.
And what year did you go with the Voice?
Excuse me?
What year did you join the Voice?
Well, I started writing for them in 1975, not too long after I arrived here.
Yeah, and you were the first one that wrote for The Voice, of a man of color, or something?
Yeah, I was there first.
They were a little bit lagging in terms of some of the ideals that they might have had, or what did you think of The Voice, or what do you think of it, or what do you think
When
of
I was
press?
there, it was a great paper.
You were, okay.
Yeah, I don't like it much now. But when I was there, it had, it had Il Mark, it had Karen Durbin, it had Robert Christgau. It had some of the best editors in New York City who read that paper. And you could really learn you could really develop your craft at the Voice at that time, because you had people who would let you go your way, but they would help you get there.
Yeah. Was it a model for much what we call the underground press? Was it underground? Was it above ground? Where did it fit in? And that whole thing, East Village Other and all those kind of other
I think
things
it started underground, but I think it started underground, and then I think it's Periscope came up, and people watched that move through the water, and I think eventually it just came up out of the water.
Surface, riding up on the surface like a scow.
He eventually now it's pretty much a garbage scow. But then for a while it was a yacht for a while.
Yeah, okay.
It was a yacht.
A yacht?
It was a yacht.
You're getting all mixed up with nautical metaphors here.
It was a yacht.
And you were writing on that sort of, and then
Ellen Willis, she was one of the editors. That was a great editor. Great.
And then you were doing that, and all the while following the music scene, right?
Right.
And the jazz and the music, and if you go jazz blues, you've had to do with they've managed to get this thing at Lincoln Center now, right? I think it's called the Hall of Swing or something. It's
a House of Swing.
It's a House of Swing, and they're getting a commitment to jazz as a art form at Lincoln Center. You've had a hand in that, and that grew out of your long interest and knowledge of the musical form, and also did it include your interest in the blues and in gospel, and where did the jazz come from in your experience?
Well, I mean, like I told you, I became a fan of jazz through my mother, and I remained one. And along the way, I would go hear people like Big Boy Crudup and Taj Mahal and Skip James and a number of these different people when they would be playing in Los Angeles. And of course, Clara Ward or whomever was singing gospel around at that time, I go hear it. But my abiding passion for music was jazz.
Was jazz. Where'd it come out of? Where's jazz coming from? What are the roots of jazz? Is it coming out of blues? Blues preceded it? What's the history of that? It comes, where does jazz?
Well, I think you have
from.
Well, you have this. Well, you have the Black Americans. You have the fiddle music. You have ragtime. You have blues. Excuse me. Then you have jazz. And jazz has been played in a number of different styles. I don't think that the invention of a style, it's automatically that one style is more advanced than another style necessarily, because in the world of art, I don't know that. In other words, because
Jackson Pollock
Jackson Pollock, he's not on the level of Picasso, but he was.
Picasso's a great artist.
Well, the thing was, Jackson Pollock could do what he did, but it was a very narrow thing that he could do.
Dripping Autumn. Expressionism was a big movement.
But he was good. He was good at what he did.
He was
good at what he did. But I mean, when you
Picasso was a giant, right?
Yeah, because he could do so many.
Yeah,
things.
man.
He could do many things.
But
but not. It wasn't just that he could do a lot of things. It was that he had such fire. See, he could do a lot of things that were brilliant things, but it was the heat, the fire that he could bring to it that really made him stand out too.
Was Ezra Pound said I think said the artist is the antenna of the race?
He did say that.
They pick things up sooner, and you believe that's a true fact? You think that they're 1905, you had Picasso and that kind, and they're picking up on things that Mr. Einstein was working on over in physics, but they're picking up on the zeitgeist or on the kind. Do you think there's something to that? The artists are in a certain sense picking like McLuhan used to use the line. Remember the DO line? They used to have the distant early warning system against Soviet missiles coming. And he used to call the artists were like a DO line. They were picking up on things earlier, and they're sort of in advance. And do you think there's something might be said for there's a sensitivity by the real true artists that are picking up on important developments that are going to have social and political and economic relevancy a little bit down the line, but they're picking up on big movements? Or
I don't know.
Okay.
Because I've met so many different people who are in the arts who basically don't know anything
like
other than the thing they can do.
Yeah.
And so they don't have any. I've met many of them who don't really have any big comprehensive vision of the world. And even if they do, that doesn't make them, that doesn't, see the thing to me is what, the most important thing about people to me is that periodically they discover their own humanity, even when there's no encouragement to do it. And that's to me a lot more profound than a a political theory, say, even though the one we have is about the best.
The political system we have is the best, you think, right?
Well, I think the I think the idea
Yeah.
I think the idea of, in the Constitution and how they function and what they mean and the idea of e pluribus unum and how that functions in the jazz band, for instance, an aesthetic transfer that out of many one, out of one many, all of that, it's like that that idea of being able to, and also the idea of being able to change. What I call is it's a way of being able to politically redeem yourself through the writing of new law, through the extension of laws. I mean, the way
that's when the guy goes off on a riff. You get all comfortable here, and the guy goes off on a little riff, and that's a good riff. And you finally have to get to that if you're going to raise that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, a person can change the whole direction of the band. That's true.
Comfortable as you are in there, you're riffing really good, and you really get up to a high point, and then some son of a gun takes the beep, 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 it goes up there, and then that kind of thing makes for change. But at the same time, music's a beautiful metaphor, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, in a certain sense, for the human thing, because you're playing with some guys, you're playing with a guy who's playing the horn, you want him to play the best horn he possibly can. There's no zero-sum thing. Do you think there is? Or, a zero-sum thing where one person's gain is another person's loss? Or people,
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. That's not true in music. Yeah. Well, not in jazz anyway.
Yeah,
Right. No, it's not.
And you've been following that. That's your main love and that sort of thing, do you think it's fair to say? Jazz still is?
You mean in music?
Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, probably in music. I like that the most because I think that...
So what do you think is the state of jazz now? You got this museum at the... you've got this hall at Lincoln Center, which is a nod from the established society to this art form that had been sort of seen aside for a while.
No, the only problem with that is that, hospitals are a nod from the established society, too.
Yeah.
So are elevators and electric lights. I mean, there are a lot of things that are nods from the established society. I mean, the idea that something is respected, that it loses
cutting edge?
Something about it. I mean, that's like saying surgery, unless surgery takes place in somebody's basement with broken bottles or something. If you put it in Lenox Hill, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I know. I understand. That's a dynamic.
That's the way that gets. See, that's a kind of a dumb East Village sort of argument that you have. I mean, particularly when you think of the fact that a guy like Picasso, for one example, was a wealthy man by the middle of the 1930s.
By the time, he was,
You know what I mean? I mean, in the last 35 years of his life or more, he was doing very well.
Michelangelo did all right by the Medicis. I mean, he was well recognized in his time. But then you had the other example of the one that they probably talk about in East Village of Van Gogh. He never was painting all this stuff, and he never could... You're well aware. He could never sell one during his whole lifetime. He suffered great poverty, and probably most artists do.
Right.
The artists aren't... the artistic expression of the human expression. I once had a friend of mine who said, I've never heard of an insurance actuary who had to cut off his ear in angst against the rage against the angst and so on. So the artists...
but he might have committed... there might be an insurance man who committed suicide, though.
Well, that might be. Yeah, that might be. But you know what I'm saying? Are the arts, let's just say the arts, either the political people or whatever, are they adequately attuned? Are we adequately attuned to them? You're talking about education. And are they adequately recognized by the society as a whole?
No.
Or what do you think?
No, not really.
Not really, huh?
Not really. I mean, primarily because you have stuff like rock and roll, which is like an adolescent entertainment that is paraded out here as a major art.
Yeah, rock and roll. Right.
Yeah, I mean, so you have all these people who can't really play their instruments, who can't really sing, who can't really write music.
You put the Beatles in there?
Well, I mean, are they rock and roll?
Well, they were really.
But are they rock and roll?
I don't know. I don't know music.
No, that's not what I asked you. Are they rock and roll or are they the Beatles?
I would say they're rock and roll.
But no, are they rock and roll or are they the Beatles?
Well, they're the rock and rolling Beatles?
No, they're a group. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
When I talk about rock and roll, I don't mean this group or that one.
Oh, you don't? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the overall phenomenon. you know, that you can see on MTV and all of that.
Oh, now?
Yeah. I mean,
are we seeing MTV? We're seeing rock and roll still. Rock and roll still is very popular, isn't it? I mean,
I think it is.
Yeah, I don't mean to be. I'm just not really familiar. But we had rock and roll, Elvis Presley, and all that sort of thing. You think that was a diminution? What? I mean.
But that was for teenagers. See, people always
Well,
forget.
hasn't a lot of popular, unquote, music been for teenagers, you know, through the ages or not? I don't know. Mozart wrote things that were
He wrote things when he was a teenager.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that son of a gun was writing when he was 4, you know, but...
I mean, things like people don't write masses and stuff like that for kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kids can come to the mass, obviously, but they're not writing something for kids.
Yeah, but rock and roll is still, there's a lot of music being, a lot of people, it's entertainment. You think it's diminished? I mean, we have contemporary classical music or something. People should be in a what, you know, they should be listening to really good. You don't have, rock and roll doesn't have a rich tradition like, in an artistic sense, like jazz.
The point I was trying to make, and please. I'll make it again, so maybe you'll understand it.
Yeah, try.
Is that the commercial imposition of the idea that these popular adolescent entertainments are art creates a problem.
Same with music? You know, I mean, same with movies and same with literature?
It's the same with everything.
So it's a commercialization process.
Right,
There's corruption.
But there is an idiom called rock that has produced very, very few first-class musicians.
Any really first-class ones?
And that has, in comparison to every other major musical art, is sadly lacking.
Really?
Yes, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that.
That's an interesting. Yeah. Why?
They don't know enough music.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know enough music.
Mm-hmm.
And again, its focus is adolescent.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, see, the best people. I mean, the grand irony of it is this: the people who express adolescent emotion better are adults. They do it better than adolescents.
Yeah, the Stones are still going around.
What I mean is that Shakespeare writing about Romeo and Juliet is a lot stronger than if you actually got a 12 and 13-year-old boy to write it.
Probably have a hard time getting it down. You'd have a hell of a poem if you could, wouldn't you? If they could capture it at the time.
I think so.
You think
How much more time do we have?
We have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, yeah, like that. Okay, so and now you're writing you're working twice a week for the Daily News, and you're are you watching things on the political front and so forth?
Slightly.
Yeah. Mostly from the intellectual and the artistic world is what you try to keep track of?
Well, I mean, I pay attention to politics, but, you know, one of the things about politics is that politics has a great predictability to it, so you don't really have to, well, I mean, obviously people who make their careers in politics spend a great deal more time at it than I do. But, I mean, who make their careers writing about it. But I just don't, I find, it's not stationary, it's not necessarily static, but I think it moves in cycles that are fairly predictable. You know, now if you're in a bad cycle, you're in a bad one, or if you're in a good one, you're in a good one. But I think that it tends to move in that direction. I mean, like right now, we're in a certain place that you could predict. Well, actually, I think also, in truth, for all the cycles, America still can come up with a surprise. You know, and we're in a very different world, as they say, than we were, say, on September 10th of 2000. So
that signals something, right?
Yeah, a lot of things are different.
There were things building up through that there was a context within which that occurred.
Maybe.
Yeah, you think? Don't you think? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that Bin Laden and those guys, I think they're putting the Islamic world in great danger. Not necessarily from us either. You know, see, because if the Chinese ever really decide that those people are a threat to them, they're going to be handled much more roughly than we're handling them in Iraq. Believe me. You know, see, and there's no reason for the Chinese to never assume that. You know, because Islamic fundamentalists look the Marxist nation is almost like it's something demonic.
You got fellow down in Brazil just had I did my doctorate dissertation in Bolivia. I lived 2 years down there among the Aymara, did some things down there, lived with those, and they just had it amounted to a national uprising of the Indian peoples of Bolivia who've been treated very badly since the conquistadores and still. And so there was essentially an you have Chavez, you have Lula in Brazil, you have a lot of things going on in Latin America, other than it is not Islamic based. I mean,
right.
New York Times famously said you got the world superpower, United States of America, and the other being world public opinion.
Right.
You got a lot of opposition mounting in a major way toward the model that we're trying to set. You don't think there's a challenge to the system itself?
Well, I'll tell you this.
That is not serving well. Mr. Stiglitz up at Columbia says it only serves about 20% of the population. It doesn't serve well the other 30 to 40% of the population, the system that's in place, and can't. There's structural problems,
Well, the thing,
big challenge.
The first question is this: is does anyone actually think, right?
Yeah.
That we're going to learn anything about how to handle masses of people from the way that from the plans that either the Chinese or the Russians used, the Russians since 1918 and the Chinese since 1948. I mean, both of them essentially threw those plans in the trash can.
I think so. Marx saw inherent contradictions in the capitalist system, and the Soviet system fell apart. It imploded and so forth. But it doesn't mean the inherent contradictions may not still be there.
Oh, but that doesn't.
And that there's something else is needed outside of a Marxian analysis.
Oh, but the other problem. But you see, the other thing.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing I'm saying is
something new is needed.
Well, or maybe a better version of something that's old.
Yeah. Like you started out saying, something old. It's got to be able to be remade, but not within the context of the way people are doing it.
Yeah, but the thing is, but you see,
don't know.
But you see, but the first thing is this: is these various theocracies around the world. We're not going that way.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't think.
But but you have a couple of billion people who wouldn't mind if you went that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what we're opposed to as people in the West is that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side, you have these Marxist totalitarian states. We're not going that way,
no.
So we're opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not
there's something else,
we're capable of incorporating the kinds of new things that are necessary for the period that we're in, that's another question.
Yeah,
I think we'll do all right.
Yeah, you think the human society? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem now is that people are fed appetites that can't necessarily be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in other words, once you get a guy
mm-hmm.
Who wants something that he sees on a TV or somebody shows him in a little movie, in a little box that he can see, and he says, "What is that?"
I'd like that. Yeah,
I'd like that. And
yeah.
I said, "Okay, now, a part of the world of business is the creation of appetite, but perhaps a number of these appetites cannot be satisfied. So you have this enormous frustration with all these people in other parts of the world."
Yeah. You have that. Yeah. At the time, I was born in 1935, you were born in 45, I guess,
right.
And in that time, Second World War ended and so forth, and we got, Joshua Lederberg does it, he's a leading person in terms of answering the question of a lot of the technological capability that we have, extensions of our consciousness, all technologies, an extension, it gives power, and it also gives both creative power, and ability to control and utilize the environment for benefit and so forth, and it's also got destructive power.
Right.
And Einstein came along, for good or ill, in 1905 and wrote the theory of relativity, and we get these atomic weapons, and you've got weaponry now that are developed to where where Joshua Lederberg, that if by some mistake, if by some guns of August, crazy unleashing of rage and so forth, the weapons were released, we now know we can destroy the whole species with the weapons that are sitting on silos now. And we couldn't do that in the Second World War. We didn't have that capability.
Right.
We crossed some sort of a line. Joshua Lederberg and Bucky Fuller both put that, that we crossed that line probably. We couldn't do it in the Second World War. We can do it now in spades. What's his name? Ray Kurzweil said it would be not only only our species, it would be most of the mammalian line could be destroyed with the weapons that have come. That's some sort of a new break after 200,000 years of human expression. We live in a qualitatively changing kind of time. Do you think our leadership, such as it is presenting itself in terms of the broader, and we have a technological capability of providing life support for humanity within an ecological context, it's also unparalleled in its capability and so forth. Do you think there's some sort of a change that might be coming, that the leadership, such as it is not able to realize that we have capabilities that we don't have a political, economic, and actuarial system to bring the benefits that we know we're capable of doing, because we have a commitment to outdated ideas that don't allow us to do what we're capable of doing collectively as a human society? And we may be in for some really big changes, perhaps positive changes that would be the adverse side of a potential destructive scenario. Do we live in that kind of a time that is unique in terms of 200,000 years of the human experience? Or what do you think on that large picture?
Well, that's an observation that's been around for quite some time. That once the weaponry had reached a point that the entire species could be wiped out.
About 1970.
Yeah,
about the time that the nonsense was going on in 1968 and 1967. Mr. Fuller used to say that's what the youth and that whole thing was about. It wasn't sex and drugs and rock and roll and simple little things like that. It was something existentially blowing in the wind that really signaled some new change, and we haven't picked up to it.
So we're back to that theme you were trying to impose on me earlier.
Didn't mean to impose any theme.
Well,
no.
You keep coming back to it, so I guess that's what you wanted to talk about.
No.
That wasn't of interest to me beyond the first time we talked about it.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's
fair
all
enough, fair enough.
Okay.
But what about, you think we do live in some sort of time?
Look. If you want to talk about that, you don't need me. If you want to say that we're in a period like the one you're talking about, you don't need me here to say that. You really don't.
Oh, okay.
Because I know that and you know that.
Yeah.
I mean, we both have heard that. That's been around for a while. The species will either make it or it won't make it.
Yeah, but that's a big difference. Yeah. I got a grandchild. I got a little grandchild.
Yeah,
she's 14 months old now.
She's going to die if she lives to be 150.
If she do.
Yeah.
Or if the species
I mean, everybody's going to die.
No, but Stanley, Cro-Magnon man sat around a fire 35,000 years ago and probably said, this is really interesting times. What I'm trying to say, these really are, in an existential, challenging way, something very challenging about this time. We should be picking out our antenna, the artists and that kind of thing, and all the ways in order to try and meet the challenge of our time. That's all I'm saying. These are really unusual times, that's all.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah, please do.
If you wanted to say that, why are you interviewing me?
Well, because
I think I had.
Okay.
I had far more specific and interesting things to say than that.
Okay.
I've heard that argument for quite some time, as have you.
Have you?
There are many other times. Oh yes, please.
Okay.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's all right. I mean, we can reverse the thing.
Yeah.
And I can just let you spot what it is.
No, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry.
But you did. But you did repeatedly.
Yeah.
And this is a very unusual, this is an unusual experience, but that's the thing I meant about New York. So
I've
always been surprised. I actually thought you wanted to interview me to talk about what I thought, but I can see in the context of this interview, you really have these ideas that you want to express. And that once you got me here, you actually were able to talk about.
I wanted to jam.
No. You pretended.
I wanted to jam.
You pretended to be asking me these questions that weren't questions; they were statements about what you
really,
believe.
You think? Yeah.
That's the way it came off. You'll see it.
Okay, that's a good thing. You know, the good thing we're going to have a tape, and we can see. Yeah, we can see. That's good. Well, I didn't. Okay, I didn't know that I had done that.
Oh, you did repeatedly.
Yeah. Well, so how do you feel about the human condition now? I mean,
the way I always feel about it.
What's that?
It moves towards zero.
Moves towards zero?
Yeah.
What's that? I'm sorry, could you elaborate?
Well, I mean, that's just the way life is.
Yeah.
Life moves toward death. That's just the way it is. Now, whether it moves there soon, and whether it moves there slowly or quickly, that's the direction it goes in. You know.
Life is that's sort of entropy or something. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we know that the arrow that arrow that gets shot out of the womb. Yeah. We know where it's going to land.
Yeah.
You know, now it may hit the wall and shake in the wall, really, or it may be over the target board, might be way up the way, but it's going to hit it. Yeah.
Well, that might well be. I don't know. But anyway, these are. Listen, I thank you for coming in. Appreciate you coming in.
Course.
I didn't mean to. I didn't realize I was doing that or anything like
that's
that.
okay.
But yeah, it's okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
It's all right.
And I really think. And yeah, I didn't. You'd won one of those MacArthur awards.
Yeah, there were a lot of things we could have talked about.
Yeah.
But
I got
you
in
had
the way
your
with
things
my.
you wanted to talk about, and we got them done. We got them. We got them expressed, so it was worth that. You know, because you got a chance to say what you wanted to say with me sitting there, so it's okay.
Well, okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, well,
I did.
well, the thing to do is to look at the tape.
Yeah.
We can look at the tape.
Right.
And listen, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. I
All right.
appreciate it. Your
Fine.
pleasure. Stanley Crouch, a writer and extraordinarily gifted person who's contributed greatly to understanding the human condition. Thanks a lot for coming in. We'll be coming back next week. That's it for this particular program. I'll see you next week. Stanley, thanks for coming in very much for all your work. Okay.